The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the Yalukit Willam clan of the Boonwurrung. We pay our respects to their elders, both past and present, and we acknowledge and uphold their traditional relationship to this land. Welcome to this presentation and Q&A opportunity about our vision and blueprint for the future of public space across our city. My name is Bernadine Voss and I'm the Mayor of the City of Port Phillip, and I'll be your MC for this second session about our draft public space policy. My fellow councillors, Deputy Mayor Tim Baxter, Councillor Louise Crawford and Councillor David Brand are also with us today. We'll hear the presentation before moving to the Q&A component. We're looking forward to your questions, which you can post in the chat at any time. This session is being recorded and will be available on Council's Have Your Say page next week. I want to start by thanking you all for joining us. Your interest and input is crucial as we plan now to meet the future needs of our diverse community. Open and accessible public space is at the heart of the livability of our city and really defines our unique sense of identity and place. It's where we meet our friends, it's where we exercise, where we play sport and relax. Public space is generally publicly owned and typically includes footpaths, urban plazas, parks, sports fields, shopping centres, shopping strips I should say, and beaches. So this draft strategy is key to delivering our council's plan for strategic direction. We are growing and keeping our character. The COVID-19 pandemic has made this work even more timely. Necessary temporary restrictions impacting our ability to enjoy the great outdoors and favourite places and spaces have underlined the health and wellbeing benefits of exercising outdoors or simply taking in a beautiful view. So this is why we have provided additional information outlining our actions to improve our public spaces in response to the pandemic. So this session today is a great opportunity for you to learn more about the draft strategy, particularly if you're planning to make a submission to the Council before the deadline of midnight, Sunday, September the 6th. After consultation, the team will consider all feedback and update the strategy, which will be finalised and taken to Council for adoption early next year. Damien Dewar, Manager City Strategy Design and Sustainability, will now give a short presentation before our panel members answer questions. Welcome, Damien.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon. Okay. During the current stage 4 lockdown, I'm sure many of you have taken advantage of nearby public spaces or streets for exercise or to simply get out of the house. So you know firsthand how important public space is. Luckily, the City of Port Phillip has an excellent existing public open space network. In fact, we have close to 353 hectares of open space. That open space is made up of over 169 individual public spaces. These in turn include parks, gardens, streets, urban plazas, and of course the foreshore. It doesn't include streets, which form an even greater part of the municipality. So that's about 17% of the total land area in the City of Port Phillip is public open space. This is 13% better than our neighbours in Glen Eira at 4%, 10% better than Stonington at 7%, and slightly more than Melbourne's 15%. We want to build on our existing public space network and ensure that we're providing high quality, active and vibrant spaces that our community love. To do this, Council has drafted the new public space strategy to replace the 2009 open space strategy. The draft public space strategy outlines the challenges that Council and you, the community, face, what we hope to achieve, and the actions required to meet the full potential of our public space network. Our city is becoming more dense, our environment is changing, and technology is shaping our lives in ways that were once unimaginable. And all of these things have an impact on our public spaces. As our city evolves, our public spaces are faced with a number of challenges, not the least of which is that we are growing. Our population is still projected to grow by about 23% by 2031. More people than ever are living in apartments. Parks are replacing backyards, and urban spaces are becoming the living rooms where people meet and interact. While some neighbourhoods have more public space than others due to historic gaps in development patterns, creating new public spaces is expensive and not easy, so we can't necessarily rely on this. It means our existing spaces need to work harder and be maintained more frequently. COVID-19, we're all experiencing the impacts, and it's challenged the way we are thinking about and using our public spaces. We need to carry those lessons forward into our planning for the future. And as our climate change continues to change, with lower rainfall, rising temperatures, sea level rise, and storm surges, as well as extreme weather events, we need to ensure that our public spaces are designed with climate mitigation and adaptation in mind. A lot of the land that we control in the city is in our streets and roads. We need to fundamentally rethink the design and use of our streets, give them more of a people focus, and look for opportunities to create new spaces or simply to use our streets better. The rapid change of technology means that there are new and innovative ways to use, manage, and deliver public space. Smart infrastructure, wireless technologies, recyclable materials are all developing quickly. Council needs to be flexible to seize on these opportunities. And we need to be responsive to changes that online retail and trends like working from home are doing to our local economies. And lastly, we need to respond as legislation and community attitudes change. In response to these challenges, we need to drive innovative approaches to how we provide and manage public open space. As we've discussed, this includes responding to the impacts of COVID-19 and any other disruptors by being more flexible and adaptable. Ensuring that we design public spaces with people and their needs in mind. And that we ensure that everyone, no matter their age, gender, ability or background, feels welcome in our public space. And that those spaces should be able to host a variety of uses and users. Especially at times like this, it's important that our community remains active and healthy, and that our public spaces are better connected to make them more effective. And where we're providing new spaces, that they're in the right locations. Our public space needs to create more green infrastructure, more biodiversity, as well as maintain its high amenity. It needs to enhance our environmental sustainability and help to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And lastly, our public spaces need to connect people and provide the opportunity to celebrate our culture, diversity, and creativity. To help us implement the public space strategy, we've proposed an action plan that goes until 2031. The action plan is made up of improvements and enhancements, new open space, and even proposes some more transformative projects. The action plan is made up of plans for each of our neighbourhoods except for Fisherman's Bend, because the state government's leading the precinct planning process there, and we will see significant open spaces, that public open space delivered there as well. Types of actions in the action plan include providing new open space, like the Pocket Park in St Kilda Road North or the future Pocket Park in East St Kilda, expanding existing open space, for example, through rethinking car parking and barriers like at St Kilda Marina, or major and minor upgrades to open space. This could range from play spaces and facilities to the proposed public space improvements along the foreshore and potentially in the future at Waterfront Place. Other actions in the plan include increased street tree planting and better pedestrian crossings to make getting around our city easier and making connections between our public spaces better. Our next round of structure planning and strategies will help to identify where new public spaces should be located and what they should look like and deliver for our community. And we will continue to work with the state government and other key stakeholders to advocate for and partner on key transformative projects, such as the St Kilda Pier and Shrine to Sea. This map shows spatially where all of the locations are located across the municipality. And within the document, there's one of these for each neighbourhood. The types of actions that are mapped here include those improvements to our open space, those new open spaces, some of the street tree planting locations, and other outcomes in our shopping areas. The actions in the plan are separated into 3 phases. Short, from 2020 to 24, medium, from 2025 to 28, and long, from 2029 to 2031. The total budget for delivery of the action plan over those 11 years is $52 million. This budget has been developed on preliminary cost estimates, and further work will be required to establish the cost of remediating contaminated land, land acquisition where necessary, and detailed design and construction. Budgeted amounts will be adjusted via the annual budget process, and Council will review the action plan at the 5-year mark. As stated earlier, with this draft public space strategy, Council wants to build on our existing public space network and ensure that we're providing high quality, active and vibrant public spaces that our community love. So we are interested in hearing what you think. Consultation on the draft public space strategy ends on midnight on the 6th of September via Council's Have Your Say website. I encourage you to let us know your thoughts. In the meantime, I'll pass back to the Mayor and then we'll take some questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Damien, for setting the scene. I think that's outlined it really well. I'd now like to introduce the other City of Port Phillip panel members. First up, we have Manager Open Space, Recreation and Community Resilience, Anthony Trail, and we have Senior Strategic Planner, Alexandra Hodgson. Now, could the panellists please turn on their mics and cameras? And I will now throw open the Q&A session. Okay, so we will go first to the questions, panellists, that we had given to us before the meeting. And I would ask that anyone in the meeting, if you've got any questions, please start submitting them to the Q&A, to the chat. Okay, the first question is for Anthony. Interested to know if we can submit event proposals to Council, including social distancing proposals and stay home events. Thanks. Anthony.
Thank you, Mayor Voss. Council is definitely interested in any ideas our community have to help our community remain healthy, safely connected and active in our public realm right now, and as we transition out of these COVID restrictions. We're already doing some thinking on opportunities to test existing spaces with new activities like yoga and Pilates zones, pop-up informal recreation, and virtual promotions of our iconic public spaces linked to fitness or health initiatives. We believe smart ideas can be done at low cost and with community leadership warmly welcome to ensure we maximise the public benefits. To do this, people can submit ideas through the public space strategy, contact the open space team or just submit inquiries through our assist hotline.
Great, thanks Anthony. Now the next one I think would be for Damien. It's quite long. I'll read it out. The evidence in the draft shows that the area east of St Kilda Road has only 5% open space and 1 oval. This is grossly under standards for access to open space. Other evidence shows that the Shakespeare Grove catchment is 71% impervious and needs tree canopy cover and integrated water management to meet performance standards. Despite the obvious deficiency for people in this area, the public spaces strategy has only 2 actions proposed, which are so small they will not have any effect on the overall outcome. Groups involved in initiating better outcomes, Elstonwick Park Association, Balaclava Environment, Streets and Trees, St Kilda Water and Trees, etc., have not been included in any discussions regarding priorities, and ideas presented over time have generally gone nowhere. Generally, the money, the dollars, have gone to the now resource-rich foreshore. Given the COVID crisis, the historical lack of open space in this area and the barriers, silos we have faced when proposing ideas, we now propose the Council set up a well-resourced working group to facilitate a new Council plan focused on actions which will provide measurable improvements to the areas identified as being deficient. Damien.
Thank you, Mayor. So I think Council acknowledges that St Kilda East, so Balaclava St Kilda East, is one of the areas that is traditionally viewed as being deficient in public open space for a variety of reasons. And this is an area that we are looking to prioritise the future acquisition and expansion of public space where possible. The action plan within the public space strategy does include 2 public open spaces, and those proposed spaces are at Lansdowne Road and the Coles car park site. And both of those were chosen because we know that we can deliver good quality public open spaces there and help address that historic gap. And that's not to say that we wouldn't look in the future to acquire properties to create larger open spaces. But I think everyone can appreciate that that's a more complex process. And because Council doesn't have land holdings within that area, we need to go through a process of establishing what would be appropriate properties for us to consider acquiring. And we wouldn't normally, through a document like this, indicate what some of those properties might be, of course, because we don't want to unfairly prejudice those future negotiations which we might have around those properties. To the second part of the question relating to the prioritisation of some of the projects in the action plan, we carefully, well, firstly, I would like to say that there was a very long list of projects, far longer than the projects that we have in the action plan. And a lot of consideration was given to how those projects were spread equitably across the municipality, but also how projects were staged in terms of size and cost, so that Council's able to deliver those projects over a 10-year period. Engagement on the draft public space strategy now is the opportunity where community groups can come in and tell us what they think of that prioritisation and whether they'd like to see some of those things reordered in a slightly different manner. So, you know, we look forward to taking that advice on. And it is true that our new council plan will be the result of the council elections in November, and there will be a whole process that relates to that. And through it, we will continue to engage with groups, and we will be looking to embed some of these action plans within that new council plan to ensure that they get delivered in the 4-year term of the new council.
Thank you, Damien. Just on the just part of the question, perhaps around setting up a working groups. Are you able to just elaborate whether that's possible?
So we weren't proposing to set up a working group around the implementation of the public space strategy per se. So the actions within the public space strategy are actually owned by parts of the organisation and delivered as component parts of some of their programs, and it would perhaps be more appropriate to address them through things like at project stages, or through the implementation or the rethinking of things like Greening Port Phillip and things like that, where we get into much more specific detail than the framework nature of the public space strategy.
Yep, thank you. Next question is to Alex, and it reads, will the moves, in commas, proposed for East St Kilda in the draft strategy make any appreciable increase to the low 5% figure for open space in this area? Shouldn't the approach be more ambitious?
Thank you, Mayor. So the proposed new spaces at Lansdowne Road and the Coles car park that Damien has just mentioned are classified as small local, which means they can be between 300 and 2,500 square metres or a quarter of a hectare. Detailed design for these sites is yet to occur, so the exact sizes haven't been determined, but they would result in an overall net increase in public space for this neighbourhood. We also plan to expand some existing public spaces. So we plan to acquire the property adjoining Packington Street Reserve to expand that existing site, and also investigate the opportunity to expand Woodstock Street Reserve into the Road Reserve, which again will increase the amount of net space in the neighbourhood. And as Damien has previously mentioned, we haven't ruled out the possibility of acquiring property to create more public space. It's just a more complex process that takes some time.
Thanks, Alex. Next question. MO Moran Reserve is currently used as the landing point for skydivers. Won't this interfere with the proposed dog off-leash park? And why was MO Moran Reserve chosen for a dog off-leash park when there have been community requests to fence Clark Reserve? I think that one's for Anthony.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Marine Reserve, which is part of the Elwood foreshore and on the border of St Kilda, was identified as the best location for our next fenced-off dog off-lead park. We received lots of feedback in our first consultation on the public space strategy of a need in those two areas. Our other fenced dog park off-lead is in South Melbourne at Eastern Reserve in the north of our municipality. We currently have a live grant to get state funding to support this delivery of this project within the next financial year. The criteria for that funding grant at state required a minimum of 5,000 metres squared, located in underutilised open space, located in an area of high community need and safe and easy to access. So using our experiences from Eastern Reserve in the northern municipality, is that fenced dog off parks attract people from outside the local area. Turf can be heavily impacted. They can be noisy and smelly and are not always supported by the neighbouring residents. So the location requires some really strategic planning. So officers considered, based on that first feedback, sites like Point Ormond, MMO Moran, Clark Reserve, the Elwood Schools and Robertson Reserves in that sort of surrounding precinct. The assessment resulted in MO Moran Reserve being the preferred option, as the site is already dog off leash area. It is safe with high amenity value. It's close to parking and has the largest walking catchment down the Elwood Canal, grabbing most of Elwood, and north and south of that foreshore, grabbing other areas of our municipality. The location will not impact the skydiving landing zone and demonstrates how once a single purpose space, mainly just skydiving, is now being reimagined to provide community fitness station, a new dog park, and hopefully attract more informal passive recreation pursuits to the space. We'll also look to get more green in and more of those other strategies that are linked through this public space strategy.
Thanks, Anthony. It's hard to get used to saying MO Moran Reserve. I just normally refer to it as Moran Reserve, but it is the full name. So next question, will public spaces in Port Phillip have a role to play in rebuilding our economy post-COVID? I think this one's for you, Damien.
Thank you, Mary. So all of our public spaces will play a role in helping rebuild our economy post the COVID pandemic, just as they're doing the heavy lifting now. At our budget last night, as part of the COVID recovery package, there was a series of initiatives included within that. Some of those relate to placemaking and the activation of public spaces, and there'll be a series of activations, particularly related to our activity centres, that will continue to advance, as well as looking for opportunities where we can create some more space so that people can, in a more socially distant way, access some of their local activity centres.
Thank you. And this one's for you, Alex. Given the lack of public space in Balaclava St Kilda East neighbourhood, there's a bit of a theme here. Is there an opportunity to identify clear walking links in the strategy, including along the train line? and improve pedestrian amenity by planting more trees, improving footpaths, providing more seating and shaded areas? And can some of these walking links have activations along the way? For example, hopscotch, breakaway areas for things like basketball hoop. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Mayor. So we do recognise that the local community has established some key walking links through this neighbourhood, for example, between the Balaclava and Ripponlea train stations and other areas along the train line, just to name a few. One of the outcomes in the draft strategy is to partner more effectively with the state government, departments like VicTrack and the Department of Transport to better utilise state-owned land for public space. Our citywide outcomes also identify a number of key moves that aim to improve pedestrian amenity throughout the whole city, including improved street tree planting and increased canopy cover, better wayfinding, more shade, more seats for pause points along key routes, creating more shared zones on streets where it's appropriate. And with these outcomes embedded in the strategy, it's intended that any street upgrade would take these improvements into consideration. There's also a number of streets identified in the strategy where increased greening should be prioritised. In terms of providing more informal activations, we have strategies in place throughout the organisation to support the ongoing provision of informal sport and rec facilities across the city, and we would aim to include these in any upgrade or redesign of our public space. The draft public space strategy also encourages pop-up parks and play streets that could include more informal activities, and they are also a great way to test more permanent ideas. So we encourage any and all suggestions on areas where we can set up these kinds of activations.
Great. Next one looks like it's for you, Damien. And it says, my question is, what plans are proposed to increase the number of electric vehicle charging stations in Port Phillip? And then it says, according to the website, the City of Port Phillip is encouraging uptake of electric vehicles by installing public charging stations and working with partners and electricity distributors to install more charging stations on public land. I would like to know if this is being addressed in the draft strategy. Thanks, Damien.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a topic I know that lots of people are passionately interested about, and within the draft budget that went to council last evening, for example, there was consideration of a community electric vehicle charging program. Of a couple of the initiatives that council has undertaken, or perhaps firstly to address the public space strategy. So the public space strategy doesn't preclude the provision of facilities for EV charging, and actioning those initiatives would fall to our sustainability program areas and other parts of the municipality. At the moment, some of the things that council is looking at is facilitating public EV charging facilities on council land. Recently, the two electric vehicle chargers were installed at South Melbourne Car Market rooftop for use by the community. Unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we haven't been able to operationalise those yet. Officers are also working with electricity distributors and car share companies to look at other ways of installing on-street charging facilities in the municipality. We're also looking at how we can encourage and enforce charging facilities on private land by updating planning scheme requirements, for example, which would require developers to include EV charging infrastructure in new developments. And obviously, we continue to advocate to Victorian and the federal government to provide more incentives for EV ownership, and also to look at installing sort of more regional fast charging infrastructure. Then additionally, our sustainable program and sustainability policy areas continue to provide information and community support. Provide information and support to the community through our website and through other existing community programs. So these things are happening sort of separately or in addition to the public space strategy, rather than it being an action of it.
Thank you. Next one's for you too, Damien. The plan talks about partnering with developers to support greening. How will this occur, and will Council use any planning mechanisms to achieve greening outcomes?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a very interesting topic about greening on private land and how we can help facilitate that through the planning scheme or through planning mechanisms. We are looking at how we can encourage developers to provide more green open space as a component of those developments. Obviously, implementing some of these things through the planning scheme takes time, and the lag of these things appearing in developments also takes some time. So I encourage everybody to be patient. We are trying to work to ensure that we see better greening outcomes in private development, but also that we are seeing larger trees, for example, and looking at ways that we can incorporate more sustainability technologies into new developments so that we can get things like green roofs and other initiatives like that we know the community are all very interested in and support.
Thank you. This one's probably for you, Anthony. I'm just trying to make sense of it. Will access to cycling to open space and bike loop to secure expensive bikes? Do you understand what that is?
No, but I'm happy to give a little bit of an insight. Hopefully I answer the question, Mevos.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we've seen through COVID, not only has public realm been more appreciated, sort of the return of cycling has seen a significant increase. And going forward, obviously cycling on our road infrastructure, but also through some of our key public spaces is essential. Our foreshore trial for commuters and sort of weekend does peak at about 500 bikes an hour. So this is quite popular, and we need to integrate cycling with pedestrians through some of these public realms. So we're looking at obviously our bike connections to create circle loops and connections and trips, and that's probably one of the ideas in terms of helping people get out of COVID, where these virtual tours might be promoting a sort of cycle loop that you could take to see some of our most iconic spaces through some of our bike lanes. So we definitely know that bike assets are an important part of the public space realm, and we're looking to sort of do some new stuff in that space as part of this public space strategy.
Thank you. I also think there could be another interpretation as in the bike hoops. They want to secure expensive bikes too.
Oh, yes.
But maybe if they could clarify and come back to us with a question.
So I think what that is, Mevos, is we do install bike hoops at sort of destinations and in our public realm. So we do look to do that, and putting bike hoops does help achieve sustainability goals next to buildings and key focal points. So yes, it's something that we do install throughout the municipality. We probably need to look at the size and quantum with the demand at the moment, but definitely whenever we're looking at improving particular spaces, we're trying to connect as many of our organisational strategies, be that active transport, more permeable surfaces, larger canopy, public space, safety and lighting. So we're trying to integrate informal recreation at playgrounds. For example, the upcoming Joel Murphy Regional Playground is not only going to be a playground, it's also got a basketball hoop and play court area. It's got sporting spaces around it. We're removing fences to create more open space at that particular location. So we're looking at these things from a place perspective when we're doing touch works, so that all members of a family can appreciate these wonderful spaces we do have.
Thank you, Anthony. This one's for you as well. What is Council's plan regarding diverse tree species being planted in public spaces and streets in particular? And will the overuse of messy plain trees be addressed over time? Thank you.
Thanks, Mevos. The Greening Port Phillip strategy is a very good read in terms of our strategy here. It is due for sort of renewal and modernisation over the coming years. Our current strategy does try to increase our Indigenous species, so there's definitely goals in that space. We do acknowledge that European and plain trees do have allergies and sort of side effects, but they also do create such great canopy and civic pride by our community in those areas where those trees are. So we are sort of looking to diversify that. In terms of our approach with greening Port Phillip, the previous years have been trying to install greening into streets with our worst canopy cover, so less than 20% canopy cover. So we've done heat mapping to guide our street tree planting guide, and that those documents are on our website to be read. Going forward, we need to sort of look at this greening through parks, through our key streets and activity centres, as also private property, etc. So that there will be some change there, and we'll look to sort of understand more about particular species and be clear about our approach going forward.
Terrific. And this one's for you, Damien. How much influence does council have on the outcomes of Fisherman's Bend's planning and development? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Voss. That might be one you you might have wanted to take yourself. Obviously, council's been an active partner with the state on Fisherman's Bend since its rezoning, and we continue to work constructively with the state government to influence outcomes and try and ensure that the needs of our current and future communities are reflected in the work that the state is planning. The state at the moment has moved into doing more detailed precinct planning for the Montague precinct, and we're working collaboratively with them to make sure that we get as good an outcome as we can. I think as an organisation, we've made some really significant or had significant influence, particularly in relation to water and some of the issues around public space, and really pushed the state hard on those issues. And we've seen them adopt that. Adopt those ideas, and we see those things continuing to be implemented through the current planning. So it's an ongoing process, and we will continue to be in there fighting the good fight.
Absolutely, and one that we encourage our community to pay particular attention to and get involved with. It's another one for you, Damien. There is no indication of the areas in deficiency and how you plan to meet standards for open space. To you.
Okay, so there is a technical assessment that backs up the draft public space strategy. We will be releasing that in the future, and that clearly shows the areas of deficiency in the municipality and further statistics that support how some of the decisions were made about the prioritisation of projects for different parts of the municipality.
Can I just add to that as well, Damien? The gaps in the network have been identified as well as generally where there's not an easy walking catchment to public space, which is generally speaking about a 5 to 10 minute walk or 400 metres from door to door. So that's how some of the gap areas have been identified, and crossing major roads has been taken into consideration as well.
Yeah, good to know. Thanks, Alex. Anthony, will community co-design of neighbourhood public space be employed by council or merely consultation?
Happy to. Our current approach is to sort of depend on the size of the project. So we do like to co-design. Generally with our significant park upgrades, we like to ask what they would like in the space. This is our current practice with our Parks and Playgrounds program. And then we go back with a concept to check in where they're at. So more than happy to sort of do that, and especially our significant and ambitious projects here. We would like to have as much community co-design and support into making sure we achieve great outcomes.
The next question, I reckon I might know who has written this one. My question is regarding a proposal 4 years ago for a swimming pool and a community centre built directly on the beach next to Port Melbourne Yacht Club. A feasibility fundraiser raised $12,000 at the time, but it did not progress further. Will council revisit this vision? that one's for you, Anthony.
Yep. Thank you, Madam Mayor. In terms of council's always willing to look at visions. The thing to note with this proposal is it requires multi-agency support. So noting where the land is. An example of this is probably the upcoming St Kilda Pier project, where we can leverage off a state project. So the state's about to upgrade that with $50 million investment, and making sure our role is to advocate and make sure the safe connection and the opportunities and community benefits when that connects onto the land side of our municipality, and make sure we benefit out of the benefits that the state are trying to achieve with increased visitation to that particular asset. So all proposals are willing to be considered, but an initiative like that will need multi-agency conversations and prioritisation above other things in our budgets at the moment.
The Port Melbourne, I'm going to add a bit more to that one. The Port Melbourne Yacht Club is looking to upgrade. Is it an opportunity now to speak to them? I'm wondering if you could, is there any opportunity now to speak to Port Melbourne Yacht Club to perhaps get a proposal like this up? Damien?
If you like, through Madam Mayor, I'll take that on. I do know that the Port Melbourne Yacht Club have been in, I mean, they have had several discussions with officers over past years, and I know that they have been having ongoing conversations with property in relation to their lease and ideas that they have about the future refurbishment of their particular facilities. Obviously, any proposal that extends onto the beach, as Anthony said, requires into the beach areas requires multi-agency approval. Also would require a high degree of community consultation, because whilst we have members of the community who are passionately supportive of ideas such as a pool along the foreshore, we have many community members who are equally supportive of as few buildings and pieces of infrastructure along the beach and in the foreshore reserve as possible. So, of course, the other element that we would need to consider is how council considers all of those competing views in a project like this.
Thank you. Anthony, another one for you. Would you be able to be more specific about Council's partnership with Melbourne Water and Bayside Council in relation to action and funding to achieve the Elsternwick Park Master Plan, which is in the City of Bayside?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, Council meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Damien might be able to add to this. I've got a bit of knowledge about the current water harvesting project that we sort of do leverage off with a Bayside agreement and Melbourne Water. So that we do have a 15 megalitre sort of a harvesting program that services water that helps water those Elwood Reserve areas. We've been working on that and growing the water usage so we can redistribute potable water to other areas of our municipality. Mr. Dewar, are you able to answer some more details about the other works that are happening there?
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Mayor. Probably not to a high level of detail, but I can add to Anthony's comment that we work very constructively with Bayside Council in relation to Elsternwick Park, and we've been continuing to engage and keep the councillors up to date on the Elsternwick Park Nature Reserve project, which is a large investment by our neighbouring council that will deals with flood mitigation that has benefit to our residents in Elwood. We have a strong working relationship with the community groups there and with that council, and continuing to work really hard to get a good, ensure that the interests of our community are represented in the outcomes that are achieved there.
Okay, now we've got two more questions listed from the public. So if anyone's holding off to get one last question in, please do it now because we're getting towards the end of the time. This one looks like for you too, Damien. Sorry, Alex, you're missing out on a lot of questions today. It says you should at least identify the standards which you should be meeting in each area. These standards are in the Fisherman's Bend open space strategy and include distances to district, precinct, neighbourhood pocket and linear parks. Can we put the standards in, Damien?
Thank you, Mayor. We could have a look at that as part of the consideration of the draft. Obviously, in the background when we were preparing the document, the technical background assessment did apply many of those principles to the way that open space was analysed across the municipality and projects were prioritised. Some of that just to make the legibility of the document easier wasn't carried through into the front-facing aspect of the strategy. We could have a look at potentially how we might be able to make some of those things clearer.
Did you want to add any more to that, Alex?
No, I think Damien's covered it all. I think it's definitely something that we can consider for including in the final version.
Thank you. Okay, and the last one looks like it's for you, Anthony. The current greening strategy does not include targets for parks and gardens. When is this planned to happen alongside street tree strategy?
Thank you, Mayor. As per my earlier response on a similar thing, that's when we look to review the greening Port Phillip strategy, we're looking to look at more canopy and how that can be achieved in parklands, but also highlight a bit more of our greening initiatives. I'll probably promote Crookshank Reserve, just an example where an underutilised space where we've actually and underutilised, had soil contamination, probably no real purpose, but we used it as an opportunity to green, sort of display some colour, some joy, and hopefully tell a story about sort of how spaces can be used and plants and greening for the good and sort of build that civic pride. So I think the next version of the greening Port Phillip will not only tackle our canopy cover, but look to sort of modernise some of the initiatives that we want to get out of greening our city. So there's economic benefits, shade, etc. So we'll definitely look to do that in our review of the greening Port Phillip, and we'll look to, and this public space strategy highlights that update is a key initiative that we need to do.
Thank you. And we've just had another one pop up. So it's more of a statement, but be good to ask you, Anthony, how we're dealing with this or allowing for this. As electric bikes and lightweight disc brake road bikes are becoming around $4,000, are being used by people with osteoarthritis. So keeping them safe is important. So that's the comment. Anthony, are you able to sort of tell this participant what we're doing around that?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor. I think this is linked to the bike hoops and opportunities for people to safely secure equipment at public realm. And as our transport strategies and trying to get more people on bikes and more people on public transport, more walking catchments, some of these facilities at our public spaces will need to be provided if we are encouraging those initiatives. So we're definitely interested in that, and we're keen to hear feedback when we are consulting on upgrades to spaces, if that is valuable infrastructure at that particular location, and then we can definitely design that into our outcomes going forward. And we'll also proactively look at sites that we know have high visitation, trying to be ahead of the game with some of these initiatives and developments.
Okay, we've got another two that's come in. Anthony, I think. I know many people in the community would be interested in a dog agility course on Walter Reserve, Port Melbourne. Would you consider installing something like that, please?
Thank you, Mayor. We're looking to install some agility stuff in that MO Moran Reserve. We're looking to sort of get the current northern dog park is just a fenced off area. We're looking to get some agility items into this this new design. Through the strategy, we need to do a lot more work around where the next sites would be. We did a similar exercise with our personal fitness stations, where we sort of identified the best sites across the municipality and then had a program to start rolling them out. That is the piece of work that would need to happen with dog parks. It is an exclusive use, so the opportunities and locations will need to be carefully thought of, as I've answered a bit earlier. And this strategy is trying to get all of our assets working harder. So an area that I also sort of have a passion in is sport, and making sure those sports grounds also work not just as sports grounds. They could be passive areas, event spaces, dog off lead areas on nights that sport aren't using it, like we are trialling at the moment at Peanut Farm on a Monday night, and sort of hopefully to expand further. So this growth and sort of lack of and the need for our open space to work harder will drive a lot of these decisions going forward.
Absolutely, everything needs to be multi-purpose and multi-use at all times these days, doesn't it? And the last question that we have here for you, Damien. We see the technical report now, as it's important for us to look at it. The Local Government Act requires transparency.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, absolutely. We agree, and we are committed to releasing the document. I think there was still a few things that we were finalising before we were able to do that. We were going to release it in conjunction with the final report when they both go up to council.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's great. I'd like to thank Damien, Alex and Anthony for answering those questions, and also for all of you that have joined in this session. Now, what I'm going to do is introduce the other City of Port Phillip panel members for tonight's session. First up, we've got the Manager of Open Space, Recreation and Community Resilience, Anthony Trail. And we have Senior Strategic Planner, Alexandra Hodgkins. So I'd ask all panellists, please, to turn on their mics and their cameras, and hopefully we're going to see some questions coming through. We do have two pre-questions that were submitted early, so I'm going to start with those two. Great. So the first one I think will be to Damien. All right, I'll read it out. I would like to see more of a focus on areas used heavily by residents as part of our COVID strategy. There is a real focus on the foreshore, which is a major asset, but we all need our local areas to serve us open and pleasant spaces more than ever now. Particularly as a lots of St Kilda East Balaclava is medium density. I would like to talk about how that will work for St Kilda East. Thank you, Damien. Sorry about the typos.
No, thank you, Mayor. Look, I think we'd like to acknowledge firstly that during COVID-19, all of our public spaces are being used really heavily. And not just the foreshore, but the foreshore is doing heavy lifting as it traditionally does. What the public space strategy does do is highlight that St Kilda East is one of the areas that we see has potential gaps, and is one of the areas of focus for us going forward. Historically, it's not an area where we own a lot of land, so we've been looking hard at how we can deliver new public space in that neighbourhood. And Lansdowne Road is one of those potential opportunities. However, I mean, projects like it take some time to get off the ground, so they're perhaps not an immediate response to COVID-19. But through it and through some of our other placemaking initiatives, where we are thinking hard about ways that we can try and make more space in particular areas for people, and we'll trial some of those where possible, and we'll definitely be looking hard at St Kilda East.
Thanks, Damien. Okay, and a reminder to everyone out there to please send through your questions that you might have for the panellists, anything at all about our open space strategy. Now, a second question that we have, and I think this one is for you, Anthony. So welcome, Anthony. It says, having enclosed space for dogs to safely play off-leash is noted as a key call out from the community consultation. Yet there are only 2 mentions of this in the whole strategy, and only mention to investigate, in commas, not to actually deliver anything. How then does this public space strategy deliver as per the feedback provided by residents, specifically in relation to enclosed off-leash dog areas? Further, numerous resident requests and petitions have been provided to City of Port Phillip in relating to enclosing the already off-leash Clark Reserve in Elwood for safety reasons, yet this has not been considered in this strategy. Surely this is a simpler and more cost-effective solution. What is being done about residents' demands in this regard? Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As per the presentation, the strategy highlights the competing demands for public spaces, so all our spaces need to work harder as our city grows. We have received lots of feedback around demand for dog off-lead areas within a fenced precinct. We've received petitions throughout the last 12 months, received comments from Elwood region also and the St Kilda region during the earlier phases of this public space strategy. We've seen it as an opportunity that we're already starting to implement some of that demand that we are hearing from our community, as well as looking at the long-term support of this need through the strategy. Recently, we endorsed a resolution for Peanut Farm to have our sports ground lighting support dog walking when there is no sporting activity. That's one of the opportunities where we can get more our spaces working harder with multiple uses. In regards to a fenced off area, we've already progressed a grant application and support around a concept for Moran Reserve, which is in Elwood on the border of St Kilda. This has got strong walking catchments through the canal, through the Elwood postcode, but also up and down the foreshore. It's away from residents and amenity impacts, which is a learning we've got from our Eastern Reserve dog park up in the north of the municipality. It also is a currently inefficient use of space, which is if we're going to put in exclusive sort of use, we need to ensure that the right space is chosen. So in regards to the strategy, we're looking at our action plan to continue to look at opportunities as demand for dog walking and other uses within a municipality grow, and we make smart decisions about how our public spaces can be used.
Good stuff. Thanks very much, Anthony. Now, we haven't got any further questions, I have to say, so either everyone's very happy with the strategy or they're a bit shy in putting one in, but I've got a couple for you just to kick off. One is a very popular situation that we've recently been lucky to enjoy, and that's the Cruikshank Street Reserve Triangle. It's currently being planted out with a whole bunch of daffodils. And many people are on their walks at the moment are stopping, taking a few photos, and there's a lot of social media commentary about how beautiful it is and how it makes so many people happy just to see such colour. I'm just wondering, how does the public space strategy address things like this? Is it addressed in there? How can the community see more of this sort of wonderful planting? Probably for you, Anthony, I think, maybe. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cruikshank Street is an initiative that we've been working on for several years now. It originally started as a sunflower concept to deal with the soil contamination because we're unable to grow any vegetation there, and now we're sort of able to showcase bulbs and different colours. So this is an issue that can be called out in the public space strategy. We're keen to green and bring colour and excitement to our city. It also needs to be captured through our Green Port Phillip strategy and our tree planting guide, which we're looking to broaden a bit more from just being a canopy target around street tree infrastructure, but this is something that we're looking to do as part of our city colour and excitement.
Thanks, Anthony. And probably this one is for, well, actually, I'm not sure. I'll ask it anyway. I'm not sure. It might be even for you, Alexandra. I'm not sure. But there is some timelines for the upgrades of the various areas in the strategy. How are they determined? Who determines what gets done when, and whether it's short, medium, or long term? And can the community influence that at all?
Yep, I can answer that one. So that's okay. The timeframes. The short and medium term timeframes were largely based on what council has already committed to through the budget process and through the existing council plan. So those ones were largely already set for us. The longer term timeframes are for projects that we know will take a little bit more time and take a lot more time to plan up front. So the action plan is not necessarily set in stone as it is in the draft, right, as it looks in the draft right now. So we would welcome any suggestions from the community on whether or not spaces should be upgraded sooner rather than later, or vice versa.
And if I might add to that, Mayor Voss, through the action plan, we were being very conscious to try and spread the load of projects, both in terms of them appearing across the municipality, but also in sort of size and timing, so that the organisation is able to effectively manage the delivery of those. So that's how some of the decisions were made about years in which different projects fall. But as I said, there are opportunities for the public to make comment about that and for us to potentially adjust that if we get sufficient feedback.
And I'd also like to ask, you did mention, Damien, earlier about Waterfront Place being, you know, one of the places. Obviously, it's near me, but I'm just wondering, what are you thinking there? What's the current plans and timings for Waterfront Place? Are you able to elaborate a little bit on that?
Certainly. Obviously, TT Lines threw us a little bit of a curveball earlier in the year, and we weren't expecting the announcement of their move to Geelong in 2023. Obviously, that's changed both ours and Vic Ports, who are the operators of Station Piers plans. They had been looking at doing some expansion of their facilities on the hard stand area there at Waterfront Place, and as a result of that, we were going to do a broader piece of planning to integrate with that. We're just circling back with them at the moment and talking together about what those next steps might be. I understand that the Vic Ports Corporation has some budget bids in with the state government for some proposals of theirs that we're not party to. But the process going forward from here is that we will now assume that TT Lines is not going to be there and restart a process that perhaps thinks about the way that that space and perhaps the hard stand might be able to be used differently. So in fact, that opens a whole new opportunity, which is very different to the one that we've considered through all of the previous planning that we've done for up there. We'd always assumed that the hard stand was going to continue to operate for large trucks.
Thanks, Damien. And we still haven't got any other questions through from the community. So one last one from me. Maybe this is for you, Anthony. In terms of the beach being probably a single largest area of open space, and many people in the community sort of don't identify that as open space, interestingly enough. What can we expect along our 11 kilometres of foreshore? Are you able to outline a couple of projects that are in the open space there?
Yep, certainly, Madam Mayor. Yeah, as you said, we've got 11 kilometres of foreshore. It's potentially a prime asset. Some of the projects are within the Elwood precinct. We've got a lot of sports ground facilities. We've currently got a fitness equipment station going there, noting the elderly sort of demand for fitness equipment that we've heard through community engagement. We've also got upgrade to sports ground lighting, and we've recently upgraded a playground. There's a playground on Point Ormond that is in the next couple of years that we're looking to upgrade. We've got the advertised marina where we've got sort of large plans and improvements. There's also a state project around St Kilda Pier, a $50 million investment in the upgrade of that we're currently partnering around and trying to get joint outcomes regarding. Further up, we've got Middle Park, currently beach for nourishment. That is a man-made beach, and we've currently got sand being put back into that beach to sort of maintain that ongoing walk. And Sandridge is our other area where we're constantly developing and got a relationship with the Port of Melbourne and their assets along there. So we're constantly investing in that space, improving our vegetation, improving our bike corridor network, our footpaths, knowing that is a very active space. And we also try to
I think we've lost you there, Anthony, that last bit. You might have... You back? No, you've gone on mute. Oh, we lost you in that last bit. Never mind. Okay, so unfortunately, we haven't had any further questions, panellists, from our gun-shy people that are watching tonight. But I think that's going to be it. So that was our last question, and that was from me. But it is a very important project for our city, and our councillors are really looking forward to hearing submissions on whether our community thinks we've hit the mark with our strategy. So I do encourage everyone that's watching to please have your say on this particular item. So thanks once again for your time and your questions, and I encourage you all to sign up for the project updates via Have Your Say.